Good evening and welcome to the Lopatcong Township Planning Board meeting of February 2019. At this time, I would like to invite you to join us in a silent moment of prayer, followed immediately by the oath of allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'm required to state that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided indicating the time and place of the meeting in accordance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975 by advertising a notice in the Star Gazette and the Express Times and by posting a copy on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Beth, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, members Clymer, Coyle. Here. DeVos.
Yes.
Pryor. Weeks.
Yes.
Mayor Nanducci.
Here.
Vice Chairman Fishback. Chairman Van Vliet.
Here.
Alternate Steinhardt. Liptak.
We have a quorum.
We just have
Okay.
one.
First thing we're going to is old business. Has everyone received a copy of the minutes of the January 23rd, 2019 meeting? Are there any additions, corrections, comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? George, I'm going to defer you to the end on the mapping.
Yeah.
Now I'll go to we have no applicants, but we have business to conduct with you, so if you don't mind.
No, that's fine, thank you.
We'll move on to new business. First is precast manufacturing, block 100, lot 6.02 for completeness. I don't see the applicant here, but I'll defer to Adam if we can outline your review.
Okay. Yeah, so this application, which our board members should have received, was a precast manufacturing company on Sprinklers Road would like to construct a 10-space parking addition and an extension on their existing office building, 720 square feet for additional office space. Planner Ritter and Paul actually prepared this completeness review for the application. Actually, George, you
No, I did
looked at the
not.
plan, but you haven't prepared a letter.
I haven't prepared the letter yet.
So effectively, I mean, at this point, the application is incomplete, primarily because we haven't obtained or submitted for either a Highlands existing determination or a waiver from the requirements of the Highlands Council provisions. That's the first issue. There are some other deficiencies, including the fact that the 10-space parking addition also would trigger a major site plan application, which they currently haven't submitted for. So that's something they'll also have to amend their application to include a major site plan or to reduce their parking density, but then that would likely trigger a variance for deficiency of parking. So they have to do one or the other. So from what I understand, speaking with Paul this afternoon, we haven't heard anything from the applicant since our letter was issued. So we don't really know what their intention is regarding the major site plan application, as well as what their process or where they are with the Highlands requirements. And then finally, the final major kind of issue that's at issue for completeness is the fact that it's a conditional use based on the current land use ordinance. So they also have to apply for a conditional use permit amendment or to be issued if they hadn't received one prior. So effectively, we're recommending that the board deem the application incomplete at this time until they address those issues and then other technical minor issues that also need to be addressed.
Okay. Any comments?
I have just a question. They would, if they build their extension and then they add the parking spaces, they're going to be within a couple feet of the road. Don't we have to have a setback?
That's one of the conditions they were looking to waive was the setback requirements.
I thought they were only asking for a setback waiver of 15 feet.
They're looking for a variance from the setback requirement for the building itself. The parking is actually on the other side of the site, so not up against Strikers Road. And actually, the setback that they're gonna have to get is to the, which I believe is a private road or access, that acts as the access for the asphalt plant.
So they're putting the new office space in the back of the building, not in addition to the front office?
It's off, let's say, off to the side. If you're looking at the main building, office building they have now, and the manufactured building, if you're looking at it from Strikers, it's to the right. And then, so it's kind of a little stub addition that they're building off to the side. And it's towards, I don't know what they listed as here, I don't think it's a named road, it's basically an access driveway, a shared access driveway to the asphalt plant in the rear.
Okay, I know what that is, yeah.
So,
There was
yeah, so it's
truck-
not, they currently have a setback of 69.86 feet per their plan here for the existing building. And the proposed condition, what is this? There it is. Yeah, they'll have the same, they're gonna hold that setback, so they're gonna be extending towards the side yard, let's say, side lot.
So essentially, the addition's gonna go on the right side of the building, and the parking's gonna go on the left?
The parking's gonna go, it's additional
Oh, then you
employee parking, yeah, on the left of the site, along the left property line,
Okay.
let's say, looking from Strikers down further, and then next to their, or behind their, they have like a gravel storage area and their greenhouse, I guess, that they use for coating the concrete units that they build. So they have a 4 parking space addition there, and a small 6 parking space addition, kind of behind in their yard area. So it's not gonna be up against Strikers or closer to Strikers. It's gonna be kind of in the back.
Okay.
Under the conditional use, there's been a lot of talk within the lawsuit that came down that the Highlands now requires them to use best practices. Stormwater runoff that they would have to. Is that going to affect them in?
Well, the stormwater regulations, I haven't likely reviewed the many iterations of this site. And they've had 4 prior applications before the board, and in some of those, they had to address stormwater. There's an underground stormwater basin on the site, in the back of the site. The need for an additional amount of stormwater management would be triggered if they were increasing the impervious by 1 acre or more, or disturbing greater than 1 acre on the site, which they're not doing. And the addition they're proposing and the parking spaces are mostly being installed on existing gravel or paved areas, so that's already considered impervious. So I don't know what the calculation is per se, but they're not increasing their impervious by greater than 1/4 acre. So they wouldn't trigger the stormwater regulations.
And they'd already oversized, if I didn't read that correctly, they had already oversized anyway.
I didn't read the full application of the narrative, like what they submitted, but likely, they probably anticipated a full build out, I would guess.
Yeah.
And Paul probably, I'm assuming Paul reviewed it at the time, he probably required them to. I can't say that he did, but it would make sense that, one day, the entire site would be, impervious, and they got an approval for a certain, I know they got a variance for the lot coverage to exceed the maximum lot coverage back at one of the prior approvals. So as long as they're not going to exceed that, they should have designed the site to that maximum. And as long as they're not exceeding that, then it should be adequate.
Right.
As far as adding best management practices, that's kind of over and above. And I don't know, if they applied, if they would trigger the Highlands requirements, then Highlands might require them to go back and install a rain garden or other type of filtration system or something. I don't know what's on the site now.
Well, the other thing that I was concerned is the runoff from the additional building, the roof space, they're proposing to direct it to a dry well.
Okay. Right.
We're in a Carson situation here.
Which could cause. So that, that would be a subject of a technical review. They also, I think they also asked for a waiver from the the study, the limestone study on the site, which we're not gonna recommend that they do.
Right.
They have to do
They
one.
gotta do
So,
it.
you know, that study, that report that they're gonna have to get done, if they don't already have one, that's not gonna recommend doing any kind of drywalls, because anytime we see a drywall in this kind of area, you're just creating a sinkhole. So,
Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion to deem the application incomplete.
That's a move.
Do I hear a second? Roll call, Beth, please.
Yes. Members Coyle?
Yes.
DeVos?
Yes.
Weeks?
Yes.
Mayor Menducci?
Yes.
Chairman Denny?
Yes. Okay. Next, we have Sampson Enterprises LLC, Block 95, Lot 11.03 for completeness. Again, Adam?
yes. So, this plan and application I'm more familiar with since I've prepared letters for this application is before the board. So this is a preliminary final major site plan application for the construction of a garage, warehouse, or storage and office building, 7,200 square feet on a currently undeveloped lot that's basically all wooded right now on Bellevue Road, near the intersection of Strikers. So again, there's, you know, number of checklist deficiencies, additional plan details that need to be provided, architectural plans, preliminary architectural plans that haven't been provided to inform the board what the building's going to look like, how it's going to meet the height requirements and different things. And let's see what else they have. Also, the limestone geological study they have prepared or provided, so it's another deficiency we pointed out in our review. And then, most notably, besides the other minor checklist deficiencies, technical deficiencies, they're also missing the consistency determination from the New Jersey Highlands Council, and, you know, with the township's petition, it automatically is incomplete unless they have that. This project would not be eligible for a waiver, so they will have to formally submit to the Highlands Council and get a consistency determination for their project before we can proceed with any kind of discussion or review of the project. So, again, recommended, it's going to be deemed incomplete at this time.
Okay. Any questions, board members? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to deem the application incomplete.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Beth, please.
Yes. Members Coyle?
Yes.
DeVos?
Yes.
Weeks?
Yes.
Mayor Menducci?
Yes.
Chairman Denny?
Yes. Okay, just like to mention that mandatory training is March 9th at the Voorhees High School between 8:15 a.m. and 1:15 p.m.
I think Zach is the only one that
Yeah,
is open, you know, to that requirement at this point in time. So I'll email him to see if that's something he wants to do. I mean, I have a whole schedule, so I'll just send him the whole schedule and tell him that this is convenient, but if it doesn't meet with his schedule, we'll have to find one. And he has 18 months, so.
required training.
Did you go?
You did?
Yeah.
Planning.
The land use.
The land use.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That's just remembered, board member. Yeah, okay.
okay, let's get back to the old business of Highlands mapping. George?
Yes, if you remember at the last meeting, we were having a discussion on basically groundwater recharge, and that the Highlands was looking for the town to produce a map identifying the township's prime groundwater recharge areas so that they could use it as part of their review process when applicants come before them for consistency. And the task we were assigned was to go back and see how we wanted to modify the prime groundwater recharge that the Highlands had developed to better reflect our center designation, and also to reflect those lots that we think have a fairly high chance of opportunity to be developed, as well as removing from the prime groundwater recharge area those lots that have developed. So what we did, and if you remember at the last meeting, the discussion was the priority that we looked at in terms of how to address their mapping was that areas within the preservation area of the township, which is essentially this triangle, we chose to leave it as they mapped it. Since this is the preservation area where we're not supposed to have a great deal of development, it's also an area that has a fairly good number of streams coming out of it, as well as some of the steepest slopes in town through these areas. We left that mapping exactly as the Highlands had determined it. And on this map, essentially the gold color is the areas that would be designated as a prime groundwater recharge area. Also, on the opposite end of town, next to the high school, there's bands of steep slopes in here that are also mostly public ground. We chose to leave their designation on those areas on the steeper slopes of the mountain. What we did try to clean up was areas that they had on top of major public facilities like the park grounds that go with the Highlands, and we also tried to go back within our, basically our center designated area and clean up those properties that might be available for future development that were not part of a major stream system. And what I mean by that is they had small fingers in through these areas. It's hard to, I know from where you're sitting to see this, but they had these areas in here designated prime green ground recharge areas, the areas within these subdivisions also. And they also, in our industrial area, had a substantial area originally mapped as prime groundwater recharge. And what that meant is that one of the regulations they were seeking to impose is that the maximum disturbance in these areas, disturbance, not impervious cover, would be 15% of the lot area, which in all effectiveness would preclude almost any kind of development on these lots, except possibly single-family homes on rather large lots. So we went through and cleaned it all up. Where we did not remove it within the center areas where these areas actually paralleled the stream corridors, we basically left the designation on those areas primarily because they fall within the 300-foot buffer, the riparian buffer, and development would be restricted from those areas, whether we do this or not, quite frankly. And our goal here, as I say, basically the gold areas then is what we were left with. If you'll remember, the Highlands made some changes initially before they ever submitted this map back to us. They took a lot of the areas in our industrial area and eliminated those from prime groundwater recharge at our request. Based on the changes we've made on the map, we've only reduced the area that they showed us before by about 146 acres. So it's not a substantial change in the map in terms of what we've done on this time through. Now that does not include the industrial properties in this area that have been taken out of the prime groundwater recharge area, would amount to more than 100 more acres if we looked at it that way. If the board agrees generally with this kind of layout, our intent then would be to resubmit this to the Highlands, let them rerun their computer programs to make sure that we're still in compliance with their criteria for groundwater recharge. And if we are, then this would come back to the planning board, this map or something that is consistent with this map or revised as they see fit, would be adopted then and included in our master plan. And it would become one of the guiding documents when somebody comes in for development, just like the septic people have to go in. The Highlands people will look them up on this map, and then based on whether they're in a prime groundwater recharge area or not, their consistency criteria would change. And so that's where we are. So again, if you're comfortable with the conceptualization of what we're trying to do, the next step would be to submit this to the Highlands and see if they agree with our changes. And if they do, then the map can be properly introduced for an amendment to the master plan. That's where we are on this. So I guess my question to you is, if you're comfortable, I'll put it together and send it up for their review to the Highlands. I will say that we did send the map to Paul. Paul's reviewed it for consistency with municipal properties, detention basins, and parks. So we made sure that those areas were not going to be conflicted and could not be developed or worked with if we put them in a prime groundwater recharge area. And we have gone through and corrected it for areas that are currently developed. We've taken all those out of the map, and we've adjusted it where we thought that they really had no relationship to really what was going on the ground. So that's really where it is. I'll try to answer any questions. Like I say, if you're comfortable with it, we'll send it up for their review to the Highlands.
We're looking at, basically, it's lower Lowe's Hollow, Reservoir Road, Foxmore, right? It's this chunk here, if you look at this big map one here, all right? You know what I mean?
It's up in the
That's-
preservation area.
Oh, here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So what is the chunk right there?
Here?
What is that? Is that farmland?
That's a large farmland that they have as prime groundwater recharge area in the preservation area.
Is that 57?
57.
Yeah,
Is that the pine farm?
Behind architects?
right, that's what I'm asking.
It's further away from that. It's the Klein Farm, basically,
Oh, okay.
up from, up along 57 and
Yeah,
519.
right, I was gonna say, right here's the intersection of.
Liberty Road.
Yeah, so it's
That's
the old farmhouse
519
used to
right
be
there.
Yeah.
Everything else is born.
We really can't touch that anyway. That's
No.
strictly under
And
control.
then the others up in the mountain, that's the barn, right,
Yeah.
behind you, Jim, right? The school,
Yeah,
so it doesn't affect that.
yeah, that area there, it drops off considerably down toward the river.
Yeah, and almost all of this is county, a lot of
Yeah.
that's owned by the county
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
County parks.
As I recall, we gave the county a little piece to complete something
so
back there, like a trail or something.
Trail, yeah.
behind, I just, for further growth, is anything behind our garage?
You're referring to in
The
here?
DPW garage, which would be on Third Street?
I think it's right there.
Approximately like where it should be.
The bottom line is that we have taken all this out of prime ground recharge area. In other words, it won't be designated that.
Okay.
Uh,
So
We tried to take it off of properties that had potential for park development, or quite frankly, private properties that looked like there was really no reason to believe they shouldn't be developed. The only place within the center designation that we left it on private properties is where the strips literally bordered the creek and fell within the 300-foot riparian buffer. We left those as restrictions through here and along here and right in there and along here. Interestingly enough, we did call and asked them why one side of the creek was basically restricted as groundwater recharge area and the other side had no designation. And they informed us it was really based on their model, the soil types over on the other side, the golf course side, didn't warrant it. So that's why it only appears on one side. Like I say, I think we've cleaned up most of the issues within the center area itself. The one thing we couldn't get them to tell us is how much we had to play with. In other words, if we removed 300 acres, would that have triggered their model? Because it might have affected, if we would have known where that number was, you might have been able to play a little different game. But basically, I think we got the areas that it should protect the water resources, but not cause a great deal of difficulty for private or township development.
Sure. And last month you mentioned, does this model, we weren't sure, does their modeling take into account not only soil types like you just mentioned, but also topography?
Well, we've discussed that with them several times about what criteria was used on this and why some of the steepest slopes come up as prime groundwater recharge areas. And the only answer we've gotten so far is that the soil types that they have identified out there are the prime groundwater recharge areas. So I have not gotten into that game because my first reaction is it's hard to imagine that the steepest slope in town is the prime groundwater area. So I'm not quite sure, but they're very happy with that designation. In other words, we've changed nothing here. nor have we changed anything over there on the steep slopes, and that's where they think it ought to be, so we left it at that. I would say the biggest concession they've made for us is that they had almost all the properties originally in the industrial area were prime groundwater recharge areas. And they took that out without us going through this process after we talked to them. So they are trying to work with us, let's put
I
it
do
that
have one
way.
question for you, Joe.
Yeah.
Looking at your map, see the big giant rectangle that's open land? Right there, right next to that's a yellow piece.
Yes.
But there's a piece right above that that's not in that. I don't understand that.
Are you referring to that?
Yeah, that's there, but the one below it's in the wetland there.
Well, the stream actually curves across, and this is the piece that they came up with. This one they had nothing on. We didn't take anything off or put anything on it. There was just no designation on that site. I cannot tell you exactly what their rationale was on how they came up with this map. In terms of all I've been told is it's primarily based on soils,
That goes through.
and that's how they've structured it. And their goal is to maintain an overall recharge rate within the watersheds. And Lopatcong, even as it was mapped before, had excess. In other words, we could remove stuff and not actually impact our calculations. I'll continue to discuss it with them, because one of the questions we had, which we haven't gotten an answer back, is can we split properties? In other words, if, not that I want to do this, but let's say you decided that half of that should be out. How their mapping works, whether we can take it out or not. We tended to work it on whole properties, you were either in or out.
Does this include any properties that are in farmland preservation? Does that just include all of them? Because those can never be developed anyway?
As far as I know, I think now, if there's one property that's farmland preservation or not.
I don't know, if there's significant parcels that are.
Well, we included state, county, and local parks if they weren't ones that were being developed. I mean, we basically included them as recharge areas.
And that would include any
And that would have included a farmland preservation piece if we, I'm trying to think, I think there might have been one. I think the town has one. I keep thinking it's out on this end of town, but I'm not 100% sure.
George, where's Liberty Road exactly on that?
Liberty Road.
57.
Liberty Road, right,
Here's 57.
Coming down,
Runs between 519 and 57 to me.
There's 519.
Keep coming up.
Coming up this way?
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. See it, Cat?
You look at the big map.
No, I'm looking at this.
Okay, where is it on this?
It's.
Oh, right there.
Yeah, right there.
That's right here. It's that one. Right there.
Right, runs over to 519, or 57.
Coming across that way, yeah, it's right like that.
I'm just, in my own self, I'm just not happy with that single one up there. I don't know if something we can do about it. I just think
This?
it's locked. Yeah, it's like it don't belong there.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
No, you've
Well,
locked it.
that's easy enough, we can take it out. I mean, the purpose of this is to let them run their model based on what we want. It was left in simply because it bordered the stream. If you're,
Anyway,
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but
doesn't matter, that's what I'm saying.
so if you feel comfortable taking it out, we can easily take it out, that's not a problem.
Is there a dot? Maybe my eyes are playing funny on me. Is there a dot? Take your arrow, come down, off that one. Come down over towards you, right there, straight across towards you.
Toward me.
Come, right there. It's on that open lot. Is there a yellow dot there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a little yellow dot
Yeah,
there.
explain that.
As far as Gary and I could tell, we thought that was just a depressional area in soil that got mapped. I mean, that's the only thing we could think
That
it
doesn't
is.
make sense. It's itty bitty.
again, these are the things, if we'd like, we can go back and easily edit those before we send them up to them. If you, and then we'll see if it passes.
My thing is, I believe it's somebody's land, and I fully believe that they should have rights to their land.
Okay,
I'd like to see it removed.
if that's a consensus, I have no problem with that.
Whether they can use it or not really don't matter. It's-
Okay,
I agree.
so we'll clean this one up and we'll clean that one up.
I think we've addressed a lot of the bigger concerns we
Yeah,
had.
the only other two, to be honest with you, we had a discussion about were these two, but they seem to be in a fairly wet location between the two streams, was those two lots. We were considering whether we should take those out of the plan. These are two that I don't know well enough. Sitting right there at the junction of those two streams.
They in the preservation area or planning area?
The preservation area, they're actually in the planning area. The preservation area starts here and goes this direction.
So what road's that, 57?
No, this
No.
is 57, this is
So
519
it's on
coming
the corner
across.
there by,
The Lowe's Hall.
where Bellevue comes out in Foxmore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our.
It's a lot of wetlands up there, so.
Oh, yeah, it's
A lot of
a
wetlands.
lot of water comes down there.
It's like a swampy area, is it not?
Well, our sense was that this is pretty wet between
Yeah,
the
it's
two
a swamp
streams and it's a difficult area, but
So I would tend to say just leave it the way it is.
It's a swamp, right?
okay, if those are the two things, we'll send it up and see if what they send back to us in terms of where we're headed.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further questions or anything? We'll authorize George to submit this to the Highlands and see what he can negotiate and come back, and we'll have another shot at it when it comes back from the Highlands. We need to vote on that?
You can just do it by motion.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to allow George to do that? Hear a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, portion of the council, is there any public comment? John, do you have anything? Okay. Sir, you have,
I was gonna know if I could talk about the sidewalk project. You know, if you guys do that?
the what project?
The sidewalk project, we had
Oh.
a meeting on it the other night.
Come on up.
State your name for the record.
110 Brother. Yeah. Just because I didn't mention at the meeting, so I was hoping to catch Paul here, but you're part of the project too anyway, right?
Yes.
So like, starting at kind of like 1107, the people who are opposed to it, Bellevue Road kind of has like a bend there.
Just so everybody knows, he's talking about the area to the left of Blue Avenue, down toward my school.
Yeah, the end times high school. So I live at 1103, and there's like the bend that kind of starts at like 1107.
Yeah.
Just if you actually look at the amount of cars coming over that bend, they take that bend sharp and they're always over that white line. And I know this from also like years of riding my bike, coming from like Country Hills going to Anna Place. If you're going down that way, like I can't tell you how many times I almost got whacked, you know, and also just just today when I was putting on my garbage cans, like every single car is over that white line. So it's just something to like maybe mention to like the people who are opposed to it, because I think if they saw the percentage of the amount of cars that are actually taking that bend and compare it to the people who are
And taking that at least 50 miles an hour.
We
Yeah,
have fear,
yeah.
he's right, because we have fear at the road department, picking up the bags there for leaves.
Yeah.
All right, I literally have to have buffer on top of buffer, because they just don't, they whip through and take the corner.
Yeah, it was just something that I forgot to mention the other night, and I was just thinking of it because more people were opposed to it than for it. But I think if they saw from at least our standpoint from up there, that they
The major
see.
complaint that you heard the other night, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but was the snow removal.
Yeah,
That's the
but
big thing that people
that's
discount.
everywhere, like, the guy who wanted a maintenance thing, like, then, okay, then all Country Hills would need a maintenance thing,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like, did he buy his property because he didn't have to shovel a sidewalk? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I mean, it's possible some people might not want that maintenance, so now it's a burden. No, I'm not-
Yeah, that stinks for them.
Yeah.
But I just think like if it's something that would actually, or you could mention to the people, I don't even know if you can.
For a safety reason.
Shout out to them for
sure.
safety reason, just, it was just something I forgot to mention. I saw it was a planning board meeting, so I figured I'd come, try and catch Paul, or, you know, anyone, so.
Is the council meeting next week?
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday?
Yep.
So that's who makes the decision ultimately, is the township council, next
Okay.
Wednesday. So
Ah,
we're
okay.
available for
That
those.
doesn't even have to come before us at all. It's a done deal.
Yeah, I mean, it's the council's prerogative, it's the council's project, that we as the engineers applied for the grant under the request of the council. So
Yeah.
we prepared the draft plans. So, I mean, I like sidewalks because they're safer than walking in a shoulder.
Yeah.
So, you know, and you never know when people are gonna live in certain areas, you know, maybe a lot of people live here now, but in 5-10 years, someone, you know, there might be a higher percentage of people walking from one
Yeah.
area to another.
Yeah, I don't think they realize that, like, yeah, it affects them now, but it's affecting people for years and years and years and years after we're all dead.
And the maintenance is an issue, of course, but, you know, the whole point of this project is that it's state funded, so.
Well, there were all kind of things brought up. The maintenance was one.
Right.
Somebody falls on a sidewalk in front of your house, that's your issue.
Sure.
Your insurance, the whole, you know. So,
Yeah, I'm
those
not-
were the negatives.
I'm not-
If you put sidewalks in, people are gonna use them.
Right.
It's, you know.
Yeah, like you don't see people walking now because there's no sidewalks, or
Right.
if you know, from First to Wildew, there's sections which are sidewalk and sections which aren't.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you know, me being out there, I went out there 2 or 3 times while I was working on the design, you know, I would see people walking, and they're walking either in someone's lawn, so they're already walking there, there's just no sidewalk for them.
Yeah,
Or they're walking in a shoulder where they can get clipped.
yeah,
So it's better if they have the option of being away from the traffic on the sidewalk. But ultimately, it's, you know, up to the council.
Most of them are coming through the park. I'm gonna be totally honest with you.
Right. And of course, I mean,
You have a lot of kids walking through that
Right.
park.
And that was the
And they're not gonna
discussion.
change that.
That was the discussion on Monday.
Yeah.
But if the fencing's installed, like you, the mayor, mentioned.
We only talked about fencing and again, I don't want to speak for the school district.
No, no, no,
I'll tell you
there's
the
no
conversation that I've
commitment to
heard.
do it, but yeah.
Is between, the road and the soccer fields.
And if the path is closed off, and in the winter when it's snowy, no one's gonna be walking through the snow there. Because you guys don't clear the park through there,
We
do you?
do,
you
because
do?
there's a landing zone there, and the
Okay.
fire trucks gotta get in, but maybe we don't have to do the loop.
Yeah.
But it's.
So you guys
it's
are
us to
providing
go take a
access to
look
the
at it,
park.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But maybe if there was sidewalk, people would walk along the sidewalk rather than walk through the park, I don't know.
And anybody coming up from the Delaware Park section or crossing over Breakley, if they're going to the park, are gonna hit that walkway before you get to your house. If you're coming up.
yeah, it's a.
Right.
So really, I mean, the sidewalk from Wildew down to that, I guess it's the bike path,
Mm-hmm.
who's using it? And so you can just go, you can go through all kinds of.
Sure, sure,
you know,
sure.
There's all kind of angles on it, so. I have mixed emotions.
Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that just because I just see it all the time, and I almost get clipped all the time too.
Yeah, listen, there's no question, I think I mentioned it the other night, at some point I didn't see a light there. Not just for the school, I mean, you've got football games and pool dances and whatnot, it's a bad sight line there.
Yeah, yeah,
If you're coming out of Wildew Avenue to make a right, heading down toward Anna Place, you gotta look back to your left, it's a sharp look back.
I think it's
Right.
37,
What's that?
37 feet, 75 feet, I forget which one it was. Clearance, it has to be there. And one of
For a sight
Is it sight
line?
line?
For a sight line,
It's
what is
probably
that?
longer than that if it's,
No, it's on the map somewhere, I've seen it, I read it.
is it?
Yeah, because
If it's like 50
somebody got
miles
an
an hour,
accident there
it's
before,
more than that.
and they were complaining that the trees were in the way. And when they measured the trees, they found it wasn't in the way. Yeah, it was an issue last year.
And there was another thing too, some people are gonna lose trees, one guy was happy about it, some people wanted trees planted, you know, after it was done, so. I mean, the meeting was good, because it brought out a lot of different angles.
Well, yeah, I mean, right, concerns were like, you know, in 20 years, the sidewalk, the concrete will deteriorate,
Yep.
just like anything does. But the hope is that when it's constructed, it'll be constructed correctly per DOT standards and regs. And, you know, if there aren't 50 tons of salt being dumped on it, it should last pretty long time. And if we remove the trees, they won't heave and,
Yeah.
and everything else, which is the reason for removing the trees. not
I gotta tell you,
trees.
living on that road for most of my life, that last few feet of my sidewalk, when the county comes down and plows it, it's heavy.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna add 110 feet going across?
Yeah. How far does it go in? How far does it throw?
Well, that was the other, well,
Like when the county comes through?
Now, it depends on every storm.
when the county comes through, yeah, because of the weight of the snow, but I'll tell you what,
Sure.
it's gonna go a good ways back, and as I explained the other night, the amount of stones in my yard is,
You're gonna go back to somewhere between 8 feet.
If I gotta buy a snow blower, I'm gonna take those stones and I'm gonna throw them back more toward my house, so. From a maintenance standpoint, pain in the neck. But I'm also got walks up over the road too, so I would have the advantage of the sidewalks. It's looking for very good all night.
Snow is, it's thrown, but then it hits and rolls, it's coming off under pressure.
Yeah.
So it might hit at 3 feet, find itself
I'm saying it's not all
5
going
feet
to
out,
land,
right?
it's not all going to
Then
land in
they go
that
more
5
further,
foot
that's
It's a lot heavier,
No.
yeah, right to the
It's
snow.
going to get beyond that.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was
I
saying.
don't think a snow blower can get through that.
anyway. And that is a bad thing, there's no question.
Rock
Yeah, it's a real
and
fair.
across it, it's gonna fly off on the side. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, man. You too.
Any further public comment? Seeing none, motion to adjourn the public portion.
Make a motion then.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we come to the favorite part, the adjournment. Take a motion.
I so moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning? Yes? Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you very much. No meeting.